Oh, it's a Friday. March 15th, 2024, the year of our Lord. And we are here with another episode of Anytime with Ken and Alden. Oh, and a little bit later, and by later I mean a matter of mere minutes, we'll have a very special guest. Dorina, DJ Bruja, is joining us today. We're going to talk about the coming revolution. And Alden, I got to tell you something. I don't even know what that means. We're going to go to a lot of places today.
It means you're first on the chopping block. That's what this is. and how appropriate that such a thing would happen, I believe, on the Ides of March are right. Today. This Beware. Is a day drenched in blood. The That's blood right. of people you work with, people that you might know, your best buddy. This is we could bring anyone on this show and then just betray them, and it would be seasonal.
I got to look behind me today. There could be some scissors, some shivs, some kitchen knives. I don't know. Do I trust Alden? That's the question. Like I said, Dorina is going to be here, longtime friend, first-time caller, and her and I have been waiting to get her on the show, and we're going to have a lot of fun. I titled this episode, Alden, The Coming Revolution, which I admit is very on purpose and clickbaity and tantalizing. What does that even mean? Are we going to be wearing tricorder hats today? I don't know, but we're going to talk a lot of things. Did you bring your musket today, Alden?
Honestly, if I was ever going to fire a weapon, it would have to be one of those. Just a nice one shot and then a lot of prep time. That. If we took everything back to that, then maybe we wouldn't have to live in such constant fear. Because they're kind of silly, right? You look silly.
With a musket and a tricorder hat? Yeah.
Yeah. I think now we're like, oh, that's one of those reenactors who doesn't like his family, so he has to spend his time out here.
Yeah.
Yeah, living back here in the 1800s and 1700s.
I like you're choosing the musket there. I will say I am both pleasantly surprised and maybe relieved, but also disappointed that you didn't lean over and say, "My microphone is my weapon." Like that would have been
Christ. I think at that point I should be suspended from having one for about 30 days. You take it that seriously.
I'm telling the truth.
Our crusade.
This microphone's a truth gun.
Yeah. Just asking questions.
Just asking questions. Hey, this is going to be a lot of fun. But as always, we like to get to a segment that will be with us from now to the end of time, because it should be. That is not the one I want. That is the one I wanted. There we go. Alden, I ask this question every week, and I can't wait for this answer because I just saw the picture about 20 seconds before we went live. Alden, what Ben Affleck are we?
All right. So once again, for the benefit of the podcast listener, I will describe this Affleck in the greatest detail that I can. Imagine, if you will, a large Bostonian just looking so forlorn, so empty, so broken. He's wearing his black coat in the middle of the street. And the reason why I love this one is, today we're going to talk about dread. We're going to talk about these different motivations for why we might want to resist and rise up, and why we need each other is going to be a big thing. Not only does it look like Ben really needs someone right now, but the only other person in the photo is a random person trying to record him while he's sad. Thus to emphasize, you can't even have a human moment without it being turned into content or without people making fun of you for it. His private moment is already shattered, and he might not even know.
Yeah. This is a great freeze frame on that face because the eyes, the cheeks, everything. The beard's telling the story. What is he? Is he holding like a one of those body armor drinks that I love so much, and a kind bar?
It kind of looks like it. Like maybe this is mid bulk. Maybe he's maybe they suckered him into doing Bruce Wayne again. I don't know.
Yeah,
but he looks like he's in so much pain. And who knows? Maybe J-Lo is right outside of the shot, and she's having a great day. Who knows? Maybe it's a good time, but
it could be. It could be.
Looks
be
pretty
a freeze
painful.
frame. But it's great, and it definitely makes me, I connect with Ben over that photo because that's definitely where the week has brought me. We normally do a swing of news, but we're going to probably get to a lot of different kind of things in our conversation, and I just want to kind of get to it. But yeah, a lot of things going on this week. I first want to congratulate Vladimir Putin for his hard-fought, very fair and balanced election win that's forthcoming.
Yeah,
Good job. You ran a good campaign. All of your opponents are dead, and you played fair and square. So there you go. All
exactly.
hail.
He went to the Tywin Lannister School of campaign management.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. But a lot of conversations to be had about elections and elected U.S. Officials calling for elections to change leadership, as opposed to just sending, the CIA secretly to encourage changes in leadership, as we've done in our past. It's an interesting time, Alden. But before I move on and bring in our guests, anything jumping out to you? Anything you want to talk about, or do you just want to watch Ryan Gosling sing "I'm Just Ken Again"?
Look, we will do a light plug later on just for the Oscars video we have on the channel, and we'll touch on it because I'm not going to do a whole entertainment news today because I really want to spend time with this main topic. But yeah, I mean, I'm Just Ken was already great. We all really liked it,
Mm-hmm.
but that performance played so seriously with the dancers and the Marilyn Monroe costumes and Slash. Like, it's just, why
Yeah,
can't we
and
all just
Wolfgang.
do
Yeah,
things like that? Yeah, Wolfgang, yeah, it's
Wolfgang.
amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Before we bring in our guests, just gonna check in with people here. Michael McCarsell, Eli's here, David Cooper, Ken Plume, Laser Bowl, Molly Damon, Jen Murrow's here. We got a nice crew. Look at this. Why isn't he
Yeah.
holding Duncan? That's a great question. Jen Murrow says he might be preparing to sneeze.
Yeah, it could be a
It's
freeze
fair too.
frame. Yeah, could be, but yeah, yeah, I agree with that.
Is
Jerry
it
the
a
Cannon
sneeze or
Junkie's here.
is it depression?
Yeah,
That's our new game. Viva la revolution. Yes,
fair question
indeed.
to ask.
As fair as
Uh,
Palpatine's elections. Yes.
yes, yes, absolutely. I wonder if there's like 4 years in, Palpatine like held one kind of election just to like, all right, in case anyone wants to run for emperor. But then he was like, yeah, we're good. I won. We're
Hmm.
lifetime appointment.
Indeed.
The politics of Star Wars. Turns out it is political. And speaking of being political, our next guest coming to the show right now, we're very happy to have. This was a long, long negotiation process, she had to woo me. She took me to lunch. We had a very nice late omelet lunch. It was a good time. Welcome to the show, Dorina Arellano, aka DJ Bruja.
Hola,
Dorina,
hola.
hola,
How's it
hola.
going,
Hello.
mijos? Good to see everybody. Thanks for having me.
Indeed.
No, this
Indeed,
is
indeed.
great.
I only
How's it
wake up
going is a
before
loaded question.
noon as a vampire because of you guys. So just letting you
Aw.
know.
Look, I feel bad when we logged in to get ready for the show. Dorina was like, I've got to work on my lighting because I don't do things during the day, and I felt really bad, Alden, that we have for me
Yeah.
a morning show, for you a post lunch show, but still sunshine.
Yeah, the Brewhouse show doesn't satisfy the morning audience. It's not for them. It's not for
No,
the working person.
no, and you all should check out DJ Bruja Radio. I have a link down below, along with a link to Dorina's website for all the things she does. But Dorina, I want to dive on in as we have just a free range conversation. It's wide open, all the paths. We've just saddled up some horses and we're going to go. But I do want to start with this question. What does it mean to you to be political as a person in your art, in your worldview, how you wake up and think? What does it mean to you to be political?
Unlike what it means to most politicians, I would say that it means giving a shit
Yeah.
about something and someone outside of yourself and your bubble. I know most politicians don't do that. They're supposed to. Some do.
Yeah. In theory.
But it's literally giving a shit. A lot of people say, "Oh, I'm not political." I'm like, "What does that mean?" It means you don't care
Yeah.
about the people that are making decisions for the livelihoods of everybody around you, including your family. So that's what it means. It means every day. It doesn't mean doom scrolling. It doesn't mean being depressed about the news. It's good to be educated, but it means getting educated enough to be able to figure out how can I, as a tiny human, part of this crazy giant planet, how can I help, even if it's a small part, every day, even if it's a little part. That's how can I help, because otherwise, why the hell else are we here?
Yeah.
That is a great answer, Alden. I'll let you jump in there. But yeah, for me, for someone who spent a lot of his life as I'm not a political guy. Both sides are bad, and I do want to have the conversation with you, Dorina, about both sides have the political traits that a lot of people want to be cynical about with good reason. But I think that was the big shift for me. Of politics is how we come together to take care of each other, and that means I'm political whether I want to be or not, and I want to engage. So that's a great answer, Alden.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing is realizing that it's a lot of it is about togetherness. which is something that we raise kids and young people to want that, and we encourage it in sports, and we encourage it in class assignments and clubs and things. But the second that the kids start to realize that it translates into all areas of life, they try to snuff it out really quick. And you realize that, that our default state is to work together, and there are people that know a lot about like anthropology and biology that can explain like the ins and outs of it, of the human animal. But it's the acceptance and the realization that you always have been political. And so, Dorina, when can you remember it dawning on you that you were involved in this anyway? Either as a person of color, or as well, actually, we could blanket it by saying as a non-cishet white man, that you were immediately drafted into this fight.
I mean, I grew up in Mexico, so it's a very different upbringing over there. Unless you're one of the minority down there that is extremely wealthy. My family was not. So I think what and that's kind of what's been interesting about moving here as an adult, because as a child in diapers, I knew that there was corruption in our government, right? Like I knew that there was propaganda. I would see, when I was like 8 years old, I saw my grandma at the first protest I ever went to, right? Outside of the local government in Mexicali, right? Where my hometown. So I kind of always just been aware that there's been injustice in the world, and that we either have to help. I'm very grateful that I have a family of 2 women that basically raised me, my mom and my grandma, that let me know, there's people that can take advantage of humans, and we have to help those humans that are not as lucky as the rest of us. And so that's been interesting to have moved to the States. Literally, I moved here for college as a young adult, and then 9/11 happened right away. So it's been a crazy ride to see the last couple of decades, see that shift in the American population, of kind of taking off the blinders, and being aware that hey, maybe these systems don't work for everybody. We gotta change stuff. Maybe we gotta change some stuff. So yeah, ever since I was a kid, I just knew. And I don't know if that's the case for you guys. Maybe it's a generational thing, right? But it doesn't seem like everybody here has been aware.
No. For me, growing up as the white kid in the suburbs, it definitely felt like none of this stuff touches me, right? And it wasn't like my parents sat me down and said that. But we were more being raised in the church. That was more the focus. And I would argue that churches are rather political, especially now, maybe even more than then. But it was still going on then. It just was, not as to the forefront. Yeah. And it was politics were separated out. And I think that's maybe Alden curious of not only other younger generation, but another coast, another part of this world. It just, for me, politics was always portioned out. That's politics is a swear word, right? We don't say that. We don't say the F word, Kenny. We don't say politics because that's just everything's bad, everything's awful, it's cynical, it's a game, and there's a lot of that we're going to discuss maybe even today. But it just was I was not encouraged to engage, right, unless there was a direct religious connotation, right? Unless it was part of that religious fight. Other than that, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We're okay. Even though we weren't, even though the system was crushing us, my parents were part of the lower middle class that got pushed out and down. In that 80s, they didn't benefit from the 80s. So that was my starting point.
Yeah, I think for our generation, there's something similar, like the same. It's the same sort of squeezing and the same expectation of what you don't talk about, politics, religion, and how much you make in a year type things. Like that existed, but I think because I was so little when 9/11 happened, we grew up really in the surveillance state era of the U.S., that post 9/11 paranoia. I don't remember airports before that, even though I know I'd been in one. So it's like my frame of reference is only this. I think it's almost looking back an inevitability that my generation would break in that way and realize like, oh, this shouldn't be right. Like we were little and we were doing the the Pledge of Allegiance every day in class, and I remember hearing little like rumbles in even elementary, middle school of, why do we do this? Like, isn't that a little bit weird? And it starts with, isn't that a little bit weird? And then you realize, oh, it's because, we watched all of our parents cry and then, celebrate as we went and did atrocities other places because of what happened here. Yeah, I mean, we're doing this episode in the wake of this whole, like, should we ban TikTok thing? And I feel like that is the natural endpoint of my age group's reaction. We got too aware for their liking, and now it's all led us here to the, maybe they shouldn't be able to dance in a way that is also full of ideas.
Full of ideas. Then you got people critical thinking.
Yeah, you can't have such a thing. Impossible.
Right. Yeah, and before we get any deeper, Alden, I can tell you what airports were like. I used to smoke my cigarette right up to the gate at TWA. It was wonderful. Bring anything
Crazy.
I want in that suitcase, as I smoked as a 12-year-old. Yeah, this is where we start to dive in, and Dorina, one of the things I know you and I were talking about off air. I don't want to just completely rehash our wonderful lunch conversation from a couple weeks ago, but how are you? I'll start by, how are you just kind of not surviving and getting on, because life's good for all three of us here. All things considered, we're doing all right. But how, getting up every day, talk about doom scrolling, and how do you push past that? How do you push past any cynicism you might have to continue to be engaged, to continue to try to make a difference? And do you start small before you go big, or go big before you go small in terms
That's
of
what
helping?
she said. No, I mean I
Giggity.
definitely. It's not like it's easy to not be cynical. It's not like
Yeah.
it's I was for a bit there a few years ago. I was actually
Sure.
very nihilistic about things and very depressed and not hopeful, right? And I think that unless you're in a terrible situation that you don't have hope, which luckily we're luckier than most. I think it's a choice, right? I think you have to choose to be like, okay, am I going to, again, sit there and doom scroll and just look at how terrible everything is? Or what I did a few years ago is, am I going to start joining organizations that are actually trying to help people, right? Am I, there's a difference between doom scrolling and getting educated and being actually aware of what's happening. And I think that joining local organizations has been the biggest help for me mentally and emotionally to try to stay in the fight of not feeling completely apocalyptic about things, because as soon as you leave Twitter and the shitty apps and you go to a protest and you see families there, right, and with their kids and their dogs, and you see how many people are out there actually caring about doing what's right and speaking up for what's wrong, that's really motivating, right? Because I mean, I was the last protest I went to a couple of weeks ago was in LA, obviously for asking for a ceasefire, and I went with my Jewish friends, and it's crazy to see how many people were there. It was thousands of people in LA, right? Like that's more people, and that was just in Los Angeles. Like talk about the fact that it was a global protest, right? And how many cities, how many people went to that. That is so much nicer to see and hopeful than sitting on your phone and, getting in fights with trolls, right? Or bots, because you never know, right? Like that's not helpful. That's not inspiring, right? And so I think those things, once you see how many of us more actually care and are good people, and even if you don't entirely agree with somebody, the core values are there of, I want to be free, and therefore I want to help free you. And if you're in that we're in that together, that's great. That's all that matters. We can disagree on how to do it, but if that's our goal, then we can figure something out, right? And so it's about finding those groups of people and friends to do those things to, and that's what's basically helped me, not be so pissed off about this shitty two-party system, right? And the limitations that I've seen in the American government system, and how there's a reason why there's now a small but mighty progressive caucus that wasn't there, to my understanding, of a couple of decades ago, right? So as much as I think, um, Alden, how old are you? Are you
I am 28.
so is that young millennial or is that what is that?
Yeah, like the last millennials before the
Right.
cutoff.
So
I
I don't
prefer
know
to.
how you feel, but I feel like a lot of people your age or younger that are I think grew up more informed than the boomer generation on what's going on. You guys may be more frustrated because you've seen it for so long, but for me or Ken that are older, like I'm like, we know that shit takes time, right? And like, and you
Mhm.
can't just be like, oh, this sucks, let's change it tomorrow. Like, you guys, Americans have been doing it a certain way for how long now, right? And even though it's a young country, like you can't just change things right away. Like it takes a lot of time, and especially when people just are now waking up, especially when that awareness kind of just started happening the last decade or so, or maybe a couple of decades. So yeah, it's really education, awareness, and joining orgs that are actually helping people. And it's also
Mhm.
picking small things, like because you can't exhaust yourself and have this become your full-time job, right? Like
Right.
you gotta
Right.
like pick something that you're passionate about, and whether it is trying to stop the U.S. war machine, whether it is women's rights, gay rights, like whatever your cause is, that if you have a family member that's gay and you really give a shit about that, then join that organization, right? Because we
Mhm.
can't do it all. So like just pick something. Like that's what's helped me.
This
Yeah.
is you're laid out. I'll let you jump in there. I've learned today that doing interviews with Alden is it's a dance. I'd love to just let you and Alden just go, but I feel like I feel like I'm holding
Ken, you're
back.
always invited to my dance. You're the DJ at
Uh,
my dance.
Dorita, you're laying out a great template here, and covering a lot of things that are really intriguing to me. Of just the idea of it can be very frustrating, I think, to many, and we joke about Alden's age advantage right now, but it can be very frustrating because change certainly doesn't happen, and sometimes I want to know. Maybe I'm kicking this back to you, Dorina, first of how did you how do you find any, and I know it might be a small amount, but how do you find any kind of comfort in just going, I understand that change takes time, and is there some sort of acceptance that maybe you didn't have of that in the past that helped you move forward and not get super frustrated and cynical?
Yeah, when I was nihilistic as fuck, you mean?
Yeah, when you
Um,
were nihilistic as fuck.
yes. The I think it's realizing. Well, I think as you get older, you either shed the ego more and go through
Mm,
some ego death, and you realize it's not about you,
Mhm.
um, or you get older and you become a dying, aging congressperson. That's why people think you're a lizard person, but that doesn't want to retire because they're greedy. So,
yeah, yeah.
I think that you basically end up knowing that because change takes so much time, you may not even see that big change in your lifetime.
Mm,
And so I feel like once I made peace with that, I realized, okay, so I'm going to try to help as much as I can while I'm here.
mm,
And I think that those, small things I do every day are going to matter. And that might help my nieces' lives when they're older, right? That might
Mhm.
help the kids, right? And because it's so daunting to think, oh, if I'm going to help today and then I expect results tomorrow, it's just not realistic. So
mm,
once I got out of that, I'm doing this for me. Once I got out, it's like I'm doing this for the kids in the future,
mm,
and hopefully the planet doesn't die when I am dead.
mm, mm.
That helped me a lot, but it's
Wow.
hard to go through that when you don't even want to think about your own mortality, right? Like most
Mm.
people don't even want to deal with that. But us Mexican gods, we've been thinking about our death since we were kids. So
Wonderful.
That's very fair. That is very fair. A lot of it, I think, is you bring that up, but it is sort of a cultural thing. Like Americans have so much hubris in the society around us, and so much a belief that we are superior and untouchable, and everything's great, and that this is the dream. And so, why would we be thinking about the fact that it could crumble or that we're finite as much as it's all finite. And what you touched on there about finding your organizations and being able to realize that there are people out there that have the information that you're seeking or that have experience in what you might want to try in terms of helping, and bringing it back to the TikTok stuff too, that they're trying to ban this platform that, despite my issues with it creatively, it becomes a connective tool. How do you feel about this idea that they want, because I know I feel this way in terms of our age group, like I definitely know that there's a big feeling that they want us to be individualists because that would serve them. You know, they want us to be selfish and or just ignorant. Like if I look at social, like you said, but that before getting on the app, if I just look at social and it's like, oh, nobody cares, and it's like they want you to have that no one cares moment, because if they have that, then they can make you feel like a defeatist. So what have you done to overcome that and try to tell other people that might be in their nihilist as fuck era after you?
Yeah. Well, I'll repeat what I said about organizing with real humans versus doom scrolling and fighting with trolls and bots. That's huge. Like everybody spends so much time being like, that Kathleen Kennedy, blah blah blah. You know, like it's not a it's if you're mad about that, you gotta go therapy, right? Like there's other things going on there, right? But I also think that, like, if you know, the reason you just brought it up, Alden, the reason that people in government are trying to ban something like TikTok is obviously not because of data or privacy reasons, right? Like they would pass regulations on data collection and surveillance that apply to every tech company, but because they have the Zuckerbergs and Musks in their pockets by, you know, giving them our tax money through government subsidies, right? Like they're basically like, oh, well, we control Twitter and Meta a little bit, so we're okay with that, and we want to control TikTok because that TikTok seems to be giving, I think, people, the young kids, a little bit more critical thinking and global awareness, right? Like that's something about the technology and social media that basically help globalization, right? Like it in both bad ways and good ways. Like it really has educated people about the different cultures happening and the different problems all around the world. That was not the case back in the day when news and information was so controlled, right, in the 80s and 90s and before. So I always tell people, always think about divide and conquer. Like that is forever true. It was true back in, you know, the Roman Empire, and it's true now. Like it's
we're always thinking about the Roman Empire around here.
Well, obviously they were so hot, but unfortunately, I think they brought that one religion that's very destructive. But all the religions are destructive. But the whole point is about divide and conquer. Is that, I mean, one of my favorite all-time comedian Ken knows is George Carlin, right? Because I don't know if, you know, maybe people don't see him as much as a comedian. I see him, I guess, as more of a philosopher. But he used to talk about that, how he saw, you know, so many Americans, hardworking, you know, blue collar workers voting for rich assholes that didn't care about them, right? Like that's something that is always been so baffling to me. And you know, you guys can talk shit about Trump all you want, and I will, because he sucks, but Joe Biden sucks too, right? And in different ways. But I'm not, you know, I'm not gonna tell anybody who to vote. Like your vote is your right, and you should vote for who you want. And of course, you know, turd diarrhea, we gotta vote for, like, you know, turd versus over diarrhea. We get that. But the point I'm trying to make here is that
it's just a little firmer. It's just
Eloquent.
a little firmer.
Yeah, it's like, you know, it's manageable. You can pick it up.
Right, exactly. Diarrhea, it's kind of like, what are you gonna do? You can't pick it up, right? It's all over your hands, and it's just not good. But anyways, the point I'm trying to make with the two shitty options, right, is that what's bizarre is that a lot of us can see that they're both shitty, but a lot of people still think that one of them is their savior. And that's where we get into dangerous territory, to think that I'm going to idolize this one human being to think that, okay, they're going to save me. And if I vote for them, I don't have to do shit. I just got to vote every 4 years. I'm not even going to vote locally. Every 4 years, I'm just going to vote for this one guy because they're my savior. And the other party
Mm-hmm.
sucks. And
Mm-hmm.
and all you're doing when you do that, when that's the only thing you do, and when you're watching either MSNBC every day or Fox News every day or CNN, it's all propaganda bullshit. Like every so often they got somebody that's actually a journalist, but it's rare, right? Like if that's all you're consuming every day, you're gonna think my team is right and their team is wrong. And that is like the most, not just waste of time and energy, but it's actually brain rot. Like it's rotting our brains to think that these people, that your neighbor is the problem
Mm-hmm.
versus the people that are literally spending all our tax money to kill people, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
to not help people, right? Like that's what I wish people would understand whenever somebody gets upset because your uncle posted something on Facebook. I'm like, it's not about you or your uncle, right? It's not about that. It's, in fact, you should be talking to your uncle so you can figure out, what do we both care about? Like, what is our goal? We both, you want to be free, I want to be free. Let's free each other. And these mofos that are taking away our freedom, let's vote them out. That's what we should be thinking. That's how we should be interacting with each other. Because we're not the
Mm-hmm.
problem. Your neighbor's never the problem.
Yeah. And you touched on like the teams aspect of it that is so American, as Jerry in our comments are called it, the poo party system, running with the analogy, because poop unites us at the end of the day. A good poop
It
joke,
does. It
immediately a
does.
bunch of adults just turn into and yeah, it's true.
Hmm.
Um they want that to be the teams, right? Like they want the teams to be above us. And which team are you going to be supporting when really your team are those neighbors you're talking about. Your team is your uncle, your team is whoever's there, and they are the team's employees, which I think is a whole thing. Like that's been a talking about generational change. Like that's been a big thing with people in my age group, has the realization or the confirmation that they work for us. We do not work in getting them what they need. And then even on the smaller levels of like our everyday jobs, you do not earn money per hour or anything like that. You sell an hour of your life and labor for that price. And that change in thinking has been really fundamental, I think, to realizing that we want justice and fair treatment across all these generations. Like I used to, I think, at a time get angry at Gen X because it's like, oh, why didn't you guys set us up and how did you guys drop the ball? And then I realized, oh, you guys got screwed and that's why you were apathetic. And then you got angry when you were younger, and then the fight just felt insurmountable. And then you had children, which are, hello. And then we come around and we just have that same anger, fighting apathy, but in real time, broadcast live, being able to, hey, is anyone else depressed? And then 30 people chime in. Like that was not around. And
Hmm.
so it's definitely a weird, like I both fear for my generation's kids, but I'm also excited for them.
Yeah, I would be excited for him. Going back to the change happens. I mean, I'm not here to defend Gen X, but yeah, I think you're right a little bit too. And it goes to even what Dorina was saying. We weren't connected, so even if you felt something, you didn't have the ability to dig a little deeper. You had to go to a library and check out encyclopedias, or something like that, or take a college course. Like I think that's the greatest thing of everything. Going back to the TikTok ban is just things are known. You can discover things,
Mm-hmm.
easier and get the truth and the lay of the land. Um, and by the way, I consider you, Alden, to be a geriatric Gen Zer. So I do go back to some stuff you're saying, Dorita. And by the way, I'm voting for turd, and I hail all turds in this coming election. But what I take your point from a little bit of our John Stewart discussion a couple weeks ago, Alden, where I think one of the points of Stewart's much discussed come back to the Daily Show was like, hey, at the dawn of the next day, it's still you, and you've got to. The action starts with you. Doesn't mean that we want diarrhea to win, but but turd
Mm-hmm.
ain't gonna save you either. And Dorita, we're joking with this analogy, and maybe we'll move off of it. But I'm taking that from some of what you're saying, also in conjunction with what you're saying about change is slow. There's a system we live in, we choose to live here, or maybe some do, maybe some can't get away. But you know what I mean? Like there's a system in which we have to play in right now to make these changes. And you're saying dawn on the next day, you get up and you decide where to get involved. Is that my summary of your revolution plan?
Yeah, because and it's funny because I think your thumbnail for the show today said the coming revolution.
Yeah.
I'm like, baby, it's here. like like it's started. It's been brewing, right? And
Yeah. Well,
okay,
I'll say it. Yeah, I mean, we were half winking and nodding that, but yeah, I think though there's a lot of folks because of those not engaged. It does feel like it's coming, and they don't pick
yeah.
up on that it's here.
Totally. No, and I understand that's why you guys did that, but I'm like that's kind of what I'm reiterating that point because voting for president matters, of course, but
Yeah.
voting elsewhere matters more.
More,
Right? Voting
yeah.
locally matters way
Yeah.
more. Right? In my own city of Los Angeles, I've been canvassing and helping certain campaigns of people that just don't seem like assholes. Right, like people that seem like, oh, this person is either a school teacher, right, or like working class people, right, like some of the working class people we gotten in Congress, like I think Jamal Bowman was a principal of a high school, right, obviously AOC was a bartender, right, like those are the people I want to see because they're like me, right? They've been working like all of us, 2 to 3 jobs to pay the bills. They know what it's like to struggle. Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell don't fucking know what it's like to struggle, right? And so I don't want to vote for people like that. It's not a party thing to me, right? It's about like, okay, do you actually understand the struggle of the American citizen and why we're struggling? And are you going to do anything to change or to try to change things? Or are you a politician that is beholden to your, corporate overlords? And that's all you care about is making yourself richer and your shareholders richer, right? I'm not going to vote for those people. And that's everywhere. That's when you vote for senators, when you vote for Congress people, when you vote for your city council people locally. Like that's what matters more, even more so than voting for whatever aging reptile we have as the 2 options for president, right? So that's very, very important, I think.
Right. Right. Alden, sorry, I cut you off.
No, it's okay. I was just agreeing. So much of this is like it's always affirming to hear it coming from somebody else, right? Because it has been that's another part of the change. I think we used 9/11 as sort of like the timeline touchstone, which it is for many things. From then to now, a huge increase has been in people realizing that it's not just the one election every 4 years, which is like a very basic thing that we know and that a lot of our friends know, but it is unfortunately not a widespread American thought. It's like, yeah, oh yeah, of course you should think local, and it's like, yeah, but people don't, and that's a huge problem. I live in Florida. I don't need to say more than that. It's like it's people here don't do anything largely to mobilize outside of like pockets of South Florida where they have to because they are in marginalized communities. It's depressing, and I wonder because we've joked, Dorina, when you showed up in the comments, and or just like seeing you around or knowing your work, like that you are extremely passionate and we joke, but it's also like a joke, not joke of like, we should just guillotine some of these people. And, the list gets longer all the time, but I'm curious, how do you
We at
take
ANYTIME do not legally condone guillotining any elected officials.
Sure. Never would we ever consider such a thing. It's DeSantis. It's like, how do we take our immense passion and wrath and rage, and how do you package that for the normals in your
The
life?
normals.
The
Like you use the
normies.
uncle example, like you
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Yeah.
if you're going to someone's, to a party or a family thing, like how do you balance what you feel with the presentable version?
And I want to
Right.
jump in that too, because this is where I was going to go next. Alden, it's perfect of Dorina, of just the uncle thing, and I'll use the Facebook uncle example as well. But I really do believe, I keep saying this: don't say fuck Florida, say fuck DeSantis, but not politically, not literally, because there's so many people in those states. There's people who call Texas home who don't necessarily agree with Greg Abbott, and they don't want to leave, and they want to stay and fight. So you've got to find common ground, is reaching across the aisle, and all these kind of phrases. It's really difficult. And someone like you, Dorina, who I've known for a long time, and I was friends with you probably during your nihilist fuck everything phase. To hear you say, yeah, we got to find common ground is that could be loaded. How do you approach that? To tag on Alden's question, with people that you
Well,
know.
it helps that, on my free time, I am building a guillotine, but no, I'm kidding. Uh, that's a lot of wood, and that I can't afford. But common ground is an interesting term because, and I've
Yeah.
been seeing it a lot because, James Baldwin, I think one of my favorite authors, he talked about this of I forget the exact quote, but he said something about that we can disagree until it comes to you infringing on my freedom
Right.
or my human rights. I forget exactly the quote, but the point is that, right? Like you can find common ground with most people, right? There's certain people that if they think that if you're a trans person and that person doesn't think that you have the same rights as they do, then that's harder, right? Because they've
Yeah.
already
Yeah.
decided that, or unfortunately, they've been completely brainwashed by the propaganda machine, whatever it is, right? Again, they need therapy or something, right? So those aren't the people that I'm talking about that you can reach common ground with. But I think most people you can, like even if you see, some guy. I was at the Vaughn's in Joshua Tree, and it's Joshua Tree is a desert, and there's
Yeah.
all kinds of kooky people there. Like there's witches like me, and then there's dudes wearing Infowars T-shirts, right?
Yep. Yep.
Saying
Yep.
Trump was right or some bullshit, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and most likely that person just lives in their property behind, and it's fenced, and they're freaking out that the government's coming to get them, and that's why it says stay off, and they're probably wearing their what's it called? Not cellophane,
The
the
tinfoil
signs,
hats.
tinfoil. Yeah. Like that happens. Those people exist, but most of those people aren't like coming out to like get you physically or hurt you, right? Like
Right.
like they like most people aren't actually violent, there is violence, and it happens, but those are the fringe minority of people that are really fucked up from this brainwashing of propaganda. Like most people aren't like that, and doom scrolling and watching cable news makes you think that people are like that, right? It convinces you that the other is out to harm you and that is violent against you. So that's the first thing I think to keep in mind, and big thing is that most people are not out to get you, right? And so once you go outside and talk to people and actually leave your computer and the internet, like most people are pretty chill, and
Did
they're
you just say touch grass?
yeah, like go outside. It's amazing. The sun's good for you. Get some
Yeah.
vitamin D,
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah. And so I'm also not saying that once you do try to reach common ground with your friends and family that are brainwashed a little bit, that's not easy either, right?
Right.
Like, I think it's just because I'm someone that, again, I moved here in my 20s, and it was wild to, to see people in America so, I guess, not aware of their nationalism, right? And not aware of like this weird, American exceptionalism belief, right? And no idea how, I don't want to talk shit about America because I love America. Like I love both my countries. I'm so fucking proud to be Mexican American, right? Like I love both cultures, and my people have better food, right? But
I agree.
Indisputably. Yeah.
I mean, just saying. But the thing that I just noticed, when I moved here is that there's this weird like egotistical pride culture of, and we talked. Alden brought up individualism, right? Of only me and my matters, and nothing else matters. And I think that, and especially one bad part about technology too is the isolation that it causes, and it causes this thinking of saying only I matter, right? And so the way to disrupt that is to actually be in community. The most important thing you can do, like even not just like talking to your uncle that's full ass MAGA or blue MAGA, which is what I call the Joe Biden people. It's blue MAGA. Like whoever is like a fanatical about a corrupt politician that you know, it's not that important to try to convince them that they're wrong or that that person is wrong. The most important thing is to be in community with them, to see where you actually agree, and to see what you have in common, to be able to be like, okay, yeah, so like you understand. Eventually, once that person trusts you, you can actually talk about like, you know, this person did this, and maybe it's not a great idea to vote for them, and this is why I'm voting for this other person, right? But you got to reach that common ground first, right? And I know it's hard because I'm not saying again, if you're you know, if you're part of a minority group or marginalized group, and somebody's yelling, you know, I don't want you to have the same rights as me. That's not the person you want to be in community with.
Yeah, no, none of this is you know, easy to accomplish, or you know, it's easier said than done. I get that side of it too. I just fascinated by it. You know, look, and I'm with you. I think my dividing line is in the big switch in me was the realizing that I'm not the main character in this story, and that this is it. You know, once others, not even rights, their very existence is impinged upon by a politician or a system, that becomes a problem for me, and that was the dividing line. That's why I do fight it. I do fight against, as you both know, I fight against the idea that both sides are bad. That yes, in theory, we can have all these discussions, turd versus diarrhea, but like at the end of the day, at least turd holds up the right to exist for a certain, you know, large group of people. So I'm going to side with that. And I can't move off that with folks, but I can find, like you're saying, Dorina, we're both waiting in line at a grocery store. You might have a "fuck Biden" sticker on your 4x4 that's going back to a compound, but we're both trying to exist. And I think everyone wakes up with that as their goal, just trying to exist. And that's a tough but common ground point to find for me.
Yeah, some days that feels like a lot existing.
Yeah, I would also add that the both sides thing, I don't even think it exists. Like, you know, it's a weird. I've heard the term uniparty, for example. Like, I think it's easy to think of things in black and white. Because that makes it, oh, like shit's so fucked up that I don't even want to help, right?
Yes.
So it's much harder to sit there and think about things in a gray way, and actually know that things are much more complex than people make it out to seem, than the red or the blue team, right? Because there's people on the blue team that do seem like cool working class people that are trying to help. It's just that what I think is rotten is the leadership in both parties. It's the leadership.
I want to be clear.
Like, it's not like every single person that's like, there's a ton of people in government that are actually like decent people.
Yeah, and to be clear, I definitely agree with you on that. I just, you know, look, Dorina, when you met me, I was a twice Bush, McCain, Romney voter. You know, that didn't come up at all. Just you and I connected as friends. And as I slowly shifted my view off of just myself and my own existence to the outside of the world, and I'm not doing the best. I'm not out there running for local city government yet. But you know, connecting with folks is what's changed me over the course of time. And no one punched me over the head or hit me with a brick to say change. I just knew people. In 2008, when I went to vote on, you know, marriage rights, the whole gay marriage bill that was popping up there, like I had a friend in my life who was a writing partner who was a older gay black man. Like that absolutely changed how I filled out that bubble that day. And it didn't come from he and I never had one conversation about it. We just lived and survived and tried to get through this world together. That's what changed me. And that's what I'm picking up on what you're saying.
Totally. It's like we have to connect, otherwise we're as isolated in our black and white bubbles.
Yeah.
The value of other people's perspectives, you know, which is what they want to cut off. Like we've talked about that. Like in terms of community, like the dark side of the internet can be keeping you disconnected, but it also allows people to ask questions. I think there's a lot of power in saying, I don't know, or I don't know enough about that. Like there's a really powerful level of grace. And I wish more people would embrace this and just saying, I don't know enough to comment. Like that's great.
Yeah.
It's really nice that you can just admit that, because
well, if Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Alden. I was just gonna say,
Oh
if you
no,
don't
yeah.
comment, you don't get the retweets or the clicks, right? So
That's what it is that we're chasing momentary affirmation,
Engagement.
which I think speaks to, in a tiny way, the larger idea that you touched on, Dorina, of I might not see the fruits of any of this, but I can get an immediate reaction. And because we're so afraid of being finite, I think we want to hoard immediate reactions. We take those likes and retweets and clicks and we sit on top of them like we're fucking Smaug. And we're just like, I'm gonna stay in here forever and just hoard all of them, and I will not part with a single coin. Like it's like that, and it's sad, to see. I think switching from anger to sadness is like it sucks. Like I don't want to feel either, but I almost feel like once I realized that a lot of people, particularly on the right and far right, that they were victims, I started to have more peace of mind over these last few years. Like 2016 to 20 me, I was on a very like mentally destructive, like I can't even break bread with these people. I can't be in the same rooms with these people. Like I'm so disgusted. And to be clear, I am. Like I am still very disgusted by a lot of the stuff. And there are people that there's certain things we just can't walk back. Um, but yeah, it is being able to have empathy doesn't necessarily mean forgiveness. I always thought those two were intertwined. Like I don't necessarily forgive people that voted Trump after, and have wives and daughters or know anyone that could be affected by people like him. But I also understand that we have a culture where they might not have even thought about that stuff, which is
Yeah.
sad. They might have just
yeah,
stopped at well, I know him as the businessman from TV. And it's like, well, then aren't you a victim of our pop culture capitalist sort of crossover? Sad, but
right.
weird.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sad, as he would say. Um, I see people also talking in the, or some people brought up religion in the chat, and you just reminded me of, I have family members that are Mexican Catholic, right? And
Hmm.
so their churches told them, well, you can't vote for the Democrats because they kill babies,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
so it's a bizarre thing of talking to family after they voted for Trump, and then them actually tell me I didn't know he was like this.
Yes.
I just thought that I was told by my church that this is what I should do
Mm-hmm.
because there is an unfortunate predicament that we have with religion because I think spirituality is great and if you can get morality from certain places, awesome. I don't think you need religion to be a moral person, but religion does get co-opted by shitty politicians, right? And they do manipulate their populace through religion, which is unfortunate and that's something that it's really crazy to talk to family members that they're like, oh, I didn't know Trump was this horrible person or like I just thought he's part of the red team and they don't kill babies. I'm like, actually they do with our tax money, but anyways.
Yeah, that's an interesting because I've had those exact conversations with family members, including very recently, who these are people I love, and they don't have red hats on, and they don't go to they're just again getting up, surviving, doing their best, and looking out their window or looking in a mirror most of the time, maybe not even a window, but that's the thing that comes up, and it's not even conscious, right? Of just no, my pastor didn't tell me to vote. It's just this is where I go, and then they're shocked. I have a relative who was like, I voted for him in 2016. I was shocked at what happened, and I can get frustrated and angry and say, how were you possibly shocked? He mocked a reporter with a disability before there's even an election. He grabbed them by the
Hmm.
pussy before the election. I'd love to get frustrated with that, but
Look,
I've learned.
Latinos for Trump, right?
Yeah, I learned not to.
He
Yeah.
called Mexicans my people, murders and rapists, and there's Latinos for Trump.
Yeah, and
Wild,
I've had to be like, great, okay, that was you in 2016. Where are you at now? Right?
right?
How can we figure out
Hmm.
now?
Yeah.
Hmm. There was a lady that worked at my high school who shall remain nameless, but we all hated her. And her son became a very prominent gays for Trump like influencer, which
Mm-hmm.
told me two things. One, we were right to think that she should not have been in charge of children in any way, because clearly the messaging is messed up in that household. But then the other thing was in terms of gays for Trump, Latinos for Trump, any type of like, again, yeah, like I'm Puerto Rican living in South Florida, and we saw it all the time. You know, like I'm sure people did in SoCal too. Like it was so horrifying to see people not just like, it's the simple version is like to vote against their own interests, but it's like to vote against their own interests, to vote against their own existence, to vote against their own personhood is a level of brainwash that is we can't fix raging, you know,
Yeah,
as much
but
as I'd like to.
where does that brainwashing come from, right? Because
Mhm.
I was just reading. I've been reading a book by Bernie Sanders,
Heard
the
of him.
book is
I
called
know the guy.
"It's Okay to Be Angry About Capitalism." That's the
Right.
book, and I just feel like he's not a perfect man, like nobody, but it's nice to have Grandpa tell me it's okay to be angry, right? But the point he's making in his book is, I get why people voted for Trump. We don't get it in the sense that we could never vote for like an idiot, right? Like, I think, I don't think Joe Biden's an idiot, but I don't think he's doing good things, right? So, but specifically, his point was that so many people were so disenfranchised, right? There's people that voted for Obama twice and still lost their homes, right? And so, like, when people say, how could somebody vote for Trump? Like, I'm like, because the Dems weren't helping them either, right? Like it's desperate. At some point, it becomes desperation. Of course, there's the Republicans that are like, in Beverly Hills that are super rich that are like, I'm gonna keep voting Republican. I don't care because I don't pay as many taxes and that's why I'm wealthy. Like, fuck those people, right? Fuck the Rick Carusos of the world. But the point I'm making is that there's Democrats used to be the leadership, used to be the party of the working class, and that stopped, right? And so once that changed and they joined Republicans and being beholden to their corporate overlords, people were like, well, fuck this. And so even though Trump is one of the worst things that you could vote for, or one of the worst options we have, that's why some people did that, right? It doesn't even come from, it is brainwashing, but it's also being so disenfranchised that you think, well, these people haven't helped me and I voted for them.
Anger,
Yes,
disappointment, spite.
yeah, he's easy to get lost in that for them. Yeah, no, and I think
Yeah.
it's important. I think it was Michael Moore who in 2016, right after the election, was saying some of this stuff on TV, and of just like you have to maybe try to understand why this happened versus just saying all these 72 million people or whoever voted for him are dummies. Like that's not going to help. It's not going to help.
Yeah. Yeah. Dorina, what kinds of stuff, just building off of this comment here from Tully Quinn, says, the problem I have with the Change Takes Times is that it's been said since the 60s. We've been stagnant since Reagan. If I can't save money, my health is worse every day. I'm tired. So on top of togetherness and organizing, when you get to those I'm just tired days, and because it's like, and on a good day, you have the perspective of I know it takes time. But on a bad day, when that seems futile, what types of stuff do you do for yourself? Like, what is aware self-care?
Go outside and meditate and stay away from the internet. I
Meditate.
think
Yeah.
the biggest thing is because I've also gotten since I've been like a workaholic in the past and things like that, because you're like, oh, the hustle, that's gonna make me not be stressed out about paying bills, and then we realize the system's broken. But I also kind of became like, well, I'm gonna try to join all these organizations and join all these causes, and then that also exhausts you, right? So I think it's all about little things, right? Like you take 10 minutes a day that, all right, I'm gonna write my representative about this particular cause I'm passionate about, and that's productive anger, right? Like, I'm just gonna write a strongly worded email to this representative. And then I did that, and I used it as a journal and as meditation, and I word vomited on this asshole if I most likely don't like them. And then that's it. I did the thing for 10 minutes, and now I'm gonna go about my day and just self-care. And that's or the next day, or pick 1 hour a week that you can, do something for somebody else. Whether it's going to, food banks, right? Whether it's volunteering with your local homeless causes, right? Like to help unhoused people, phone banking, canvassing. There's so many little things, and so many different organizations that you can join, that just pick one of those and try to, what energy do you have? Is it, if it's 10 minutes a day, if it's 1 hour a week, whatever you can get, you can muster, that's so helpful. And it's so much more helpful than the doom scrolling. And if you're like all of us, tired of, paying insurance every month that doesn't go to us, right? That doesn't go to healthcare, right? Like, I guess it's legally you have to have car insurance, even though it doesn't help you if you get into an accident, right? Like, it's obviously all of those things are broken. So those are the things that, affect us on a daily basis. At some, maybe one of the hours of that you pick a week is researching who are the people responsible in, in my political world, whether it's my city council people, whether it's my congressperson, like educating yourself. Like, that's a huge thing you can do. 1 hour a week, educate yourself. Like, who are the people that okay, am I in Arizona? Fortunately, Kristen Sinema's leaving, but I should have paid attention, so I could have voted against her, right? Because she's clearly in cahoots with big pharma people and the people that make it expensive to have health insurance that doesn't help you, that doesn't go, that doesn't actually help you create, what's it called, to make appointments, right? Like, it took me like a month to make an appointment, and I have health insurance through like my husband, right? Like, that's crazy that like the way that these things work are insane. And then the last thing I would say is because we all get tired and we're all very tired every day, is look for inspiration. Like, that is so helpful. Instead of seeing, oh my God, Joe Biden just said some other stupid shit today. Don't look at that shit. It's not helpful. He's part of the, if you're going to vote for him, great. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to, that you have to like listen to all the bullshit that comes out of his mouth every day just because he's president right now, right? Like, what inspires me and the people I try to pay attention to are, for example, Sean Fain, the president of the United Auto Workers Union, right? Like people like that, people that are union leaders are very inspiring. Like, he was just interviewed, I think, at Congress, and he used that stupid line by the Kardashians that's like, people just don't want to work, right? And he said, I agree. The people I'm talking about are the Wall Street freeloaders, right? The masters of passive income, right? Like, seeing people like that, who's just like this straight white dude that's standing up for workers' rights and calling out billionaires, like, that's super inspiring, because these are working class people that are like, that have had enough, right? And that guy is older than all of us, right? And he's out there representing, right? And there's so many people like that. There's so many union leaders that, of course, again, are not perfect, but at least are speaking up for what's right, right? And I think that I'd rather listen to those people. I'd rather educate myself on what's going on locally, what's going on in the Middle East. Like, education and inspiration are so helpful when I'm tired, as opposed to listening to, the corporate overlords.
That's why I found Ken, to be inspired so consistently.
Truly inspired. And as far as the thing, addressing the change takes time. I think there, number one, I think that's just a reality. And two, I think you should also look back at the changes that have happened, and they have moved pretty fast in decades as long for us. But also, I want to, on the other side of that, not to our listener with their question, but to those, I have family members who hide behind any small incremental bit of change, right? I had one family member, regarding some of the Black Lives Matter protests and everything, just like, I don't understand why they, capital T, why they are so angry. We had a black president, and black athletes get paid a lot. And it was just like, wow, that's where you stopped on that. That's where you stopped on that. That's the change. You were like, we're good, and realizing that we still need to push past it. I wouldn't want anyone to misunderstand, especially anything I'm saying about change takes time, as it's just this: you crack your knuckles and you go, don't worry about it. I think change is still a bunch of people pushing the ball down the field. slowly, to use a football term, 3 yards in a puff of dust it's still forward momentum, and to not not get lost in that, not get dismayed by that as much as you can, and do a lot of stuff that Dorina's saying here. Find inspiration
Mhm.
where you can and where it's at.
Yeah, beautifully said. I think that we end up in this weird place where if they, yeah, we talked about like they want to exhaust you and they want you to make you feel alone because that's easier for them to divide and conquer us. But it really is just about finding those small moments that remind you that you can affect people around you, because if they, and that could be in anything, that could be in any version of it, as a song or an art piece or a political cartoon or a video or anything. And Drina, I'm curious, in your journey with finding your ways to make a difference, I think a lot of the times for people in this world, you've been in the arts and digital media and everything for years, like they don't feel like skills that are useful. So how have you found like specifically like Dorina things of ways applying like your music or your job experience or anything into to what we do? Because sometimes it's like, oh, I wish that it's easy. It feels easier for my friend that has like a poli-sci degree to do something than it is for all of us in broadcasting or that are working in music.
Totally. I'm also glad you brought up just art in general, because that's another form of inspiration. Like, I think art's the best form of education, right? Like it's so and I just try to bring that into everything I do. And I and by it I mean not just, I think because art not doesn't just bring education, but it brings honesty, and it grounds people into escaping what I call the mitote, which is the matrix, right? Escaping the bullshit of being brainwashed, basically. And so the if you are in this space, right, and you make content, even though that's a ridiculous word I still hate, it's the the dichotomy is so interesting of we're talking about these issues on YouTube, right, which is a platform owned by Google Alphabet, right? And obviously they don't have, you know, the people in leadership at those companies don't have our interests at heart, right? Like their interest is to
Hmm.
monetize, right, and make money through advertisement. However, we are still on this platform and we're being honest about what's happening, right? And you guys have a show that you do make sure that your main thing is being genuine and authentic. And that's the most important thing you could do every day. Like being your authentic self and talking about things honestly and having difficult conversations that most people a lot of the time in this space don't want to do because they're trying to, get those clicks and follows and likes, and it's easier to talk about whatever's trending and avoid politics and avoid the hard conversations, right? And so I think that that's important. I think that that's so important to any work that you do. I'm just using you guys as an example because you are doing that and you're a great example of that. So congrats on that. Good job not being dumb about what you're doing. But and then just in my own personal career, just the fact that recently I went on off on my own and I've been doing more music lately, and I'm choosing projects if I can that as a composer that inspire me, that teach people about indigenous cultures, right? Like I'm making sure that the projects that I choose are actually aligned with my own not just my culture, but educating people in things they may not be aware, right? Like I have a one of the short films I scored is literally about rope kink, right? And it's going to the all the queer film festivals, right? And it's I believe an indigenous person that did that, and that's something that I'm proud of and that I can share with people. Also on my radio show that Ken inspired me to go on Mixcloud and do my own little DJ radio show there. I did an episode on protest music, right? And literally taught people about how Rage Against the Machine inspired me when I was a teenage kid in the 90s, right? And I shared all of the songs by all of the people that help you literally rage against the machine, and that help you, yell at the dumbass elite, and help you kind of, I guess, let go of expel all those demons and our frustrations and why we're so tired. Like, art is so important, going to protests and yelling out quotes from Rage Against the Machine, right? Like, all of those things are just, they really bring people together. And I think Sac de la Rocha, actually, the singer from Rage, he's always talked about that music and art in general are such an important medium. In fact, more useful medium to communicate with people and to reach people than stupid ass cable news.
Well, it's yeah, this is all great, and I love what you're doing, and you are making me think of one of the things that I just love doing right now, in how I'm using my time in this space. I love being silly and doing stupid things, and there's always that. And I'm going to make a joke about Del Taco and do my silly little Ken things. But the last couple of years, my focus has been on exactly what you're talking about: pulling the meaning out of art and putting it on a table for everyone to look at. And even if you don't agree with it, that's my little pet peeve of, I had a conversation with a friend recently. I'm not really political. It's like, you are. The way you were discussing pop culture, it makes you political, whether you see it or not, and you're not pulling the meanings out of stuff. We joked before here in this channel. I'll joke all the time of the Paul Ryan being a Rage Against the Machine fan is still one of the world's great ironies. But that happens more. He's not alone in that. And instead of being sarcastic, and it's hard for me not to be sarcastic over that one, but instead of being sarcastic and cynical and snarky about it, to be like, all right, have you considered this? Because stories have changed me socially, politically, and connecting with them, and pulling out the themes. And that's where I'm focusing on. And it seems like, Dorina, you've always been focused on this stuff, but I'm really proud of you for really leaning in and betting on yourself and taking this message forward in your work. And that's why, I look up to you.
Oh, well, I look up to all of y'all.
Aw.
But I mean, look at just the, not just obviously music, but film, right? Like, look at what just happened at the Oscars with Jonathan Glazer's beautiful speech that got warped a lot, right? Like, seeing a Jewish man who made a movie about the Holocaust, teaching us and reminding us, hey, let's not just look at what happened in the past, but let's look at what's happening now, right? Like, that's so important, and that's through art. That's so important.
The spirit of is something that Bernie had said a lot during his campaigns, but like, to fight for someone that you don't know sort of became the entire thing. And someone like Jonathan Glazer, or at that Academy Award level, or us here on YouTube, like, we don't know a lot of the people that might hear us, but in putting out a theme or an idea, like, Dorina, you do that in your posts about like what genre you're going to be tackling. Like, we're going to be tackling this stuff with artists like this for this reason, and this is how they might connect, or us with Star Wars or whatever you like. Telling kids, or telling even not kids, even other adults, hey, did you know that, like, this is what I pulled from it in terms of what it could mean. And even if you're not having a conversation about it, that could sit in their mind, and then the next time they engage with it, they might see something that they didn't think they would see, which doesn't seem like fighting, but it is.
Yeah, it is.
Definitely.
When I talk about Star Wars and how it changed my own life, it was not that I suddenly realized George Lucas put characters based off Republican senators of the 90s and 2000s in this movie, and I went, it was the spiritual stuff, it was the emotional stuff, it was the empathy, connection, community, things that are present in Star Wars that are inherently political, but not in a policy way, but just in a people to people way. And that's what I love to highlight. I love to use my space to highlight there.
So now we're going to do another hour on the taxation of trade routes, because that's what George. No, I'm kidding.
Which is
we're not.
Very overt and very overt. Yeah, but even then, that got mocked for generations, right?
It did. Yeah,
that
they
got
hated
mocked for generations. So it's like, all right, I can't focus on that. I can focus on what is there, what the characters say. But anyways, we don't have all day here, so Dorina,
Yeah.
we want to let you go on and live your life, but good stuff here and more to come. Look, I think this is a tough election coming up, and I do hope Turd wins, and I don't want third party Turd to take away from
And we don't
one
want
Turd.
diarrhea round 2.
Yeah, it's completely complicated, but the big lesson that I really took from talking to you today, Dorina, is finding inspiration daily from those around you, from the community around you, and connecting. And I think that's tremendously valuable. So, Alden, I'll wrap up there. As before we go to next segment, you close out. Any final thoughts, and we'll let Dorina close out this part of the interview.
Well, for my final thoughts, I will say, Dorina, can I throw one question your way from our audience members?
Of course.
It's directed directly to you. There's a lot of pressure on you to deliver good advice here. From Jared Ule, perhaps. Question, Dorina, I turned 40 in 1.5 years. Any advice?
In 1.5 years. Well, good job making it this long.
Good run.
Well job. I think the biggest thing for me that I always tell people about aging is never stop learning. Like, it's to think that you've reached a certain age and you know everything is bullshit. There's a lot of dumbass 80-year-olds out there. There's also a lot of wonderful 80-year-olds out there, but that's because they made the point to learn every day from what we're talking about, right? Education through art, education through your community. It's so important to keep in mind that we should keep evolving until the day we are no longer here. And also know that it's okay to change your mind. Like, I've changed my mind of a bunch of shit. I've learned, like, I know that what I think, how I think today, how I am today, like, I'm pretty okay with who I am, but I also know that it's possible and probably necessary to change certain things about myself as I age. Feliz cumpleaños.
Yeah. And look,
Nice.
40's a sexy decade, Jared. You're going to be okay.
One thing that's also not just about learning, it's fucking awesome getting older. Like, not the body part. That part
Yeah.
sucks.
My knee hurts
However,
today, but-
mentally, you just are more comfortable with who you are. You are happier. You deal with bullshit less. You don't take as much bullshit, and you also I think don't worry about things that don't matter as much. Like your little that's the one bubble that's good to stay on. That it's like, you know what? All of these 4 things I need. I just need food, and water, and nature, and sex. I'm good. I don't need much to be happy.
And I just need the food. So there we go. Great stuff, Dorina. This has been wonderful, but we're not quite done yet. Our final segment that we always love doing around here is our Pop Rockin' Word of Wisdom, brought to you by my show, Pop Rockin' Radio on Mixcloud, but also today brought to you by DJ Bruja Radio on Mixcloud. And Dorina, you have chosen our lyric of the day, and it's a great one. Here it is. Explain what this means to you. Bob Marley and the Wailers, going back to 1980 with this one.
Yes, emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. What a song! My favorite Bob Marley and the Wailers song is just called "Redemption Song," and it's actually taken. The lyrics are taken from a speech by Marcus Garvey, who was a Jamaican political activist back in the day. Like, literally, he was born in the 1800s. He died a long time ago, and he was a very controversial figure that probably would have gotten canceled today. And but however, Coretta Scott King herself, as in Martin Luther King's wife, said that Marcus was the first man of color to lead and to give millions of Black people a sense of dignity. So as much as we want our heroes and leaders to be perfect, they certainly are not. And so I just think that this is such a wonderful quote that Bob Marley took from that speech, because nobody can free you but yourself. Like, you have to make the choice to think, okay, am I going to let myself be brainwashed and let myself join the divide and conquer people, or am I actually going to unite and free myself and free others?
Love it. Great
Hell yeah.
tune, fun to hum along to, but also a song with great meaning. And I bet there's some people out there who don't know what it means. So I love that you're highlighting it, Dorina, and sharing it with us. Some housekeeping as we get this side out of here. I want to highlight that Alden, you and our buddy Nikki Kumar took a look at the Oscars, your top moments. I'm sure you spent a lot of time on Naked John Cena, as I would have as well. That is up on the YouTube channel here or the podcast. If you're listening, the podcast is out. I'm still battling with Apple, I think. I don't know. It's been a thing, but the podcast is in a lot of spots. Just search. You'll find it. But you have us here live every Friday. Also want to highlight that in the first week of April, I'll be in Boston with our buddy Mark Ellis. Speaking of people who matured and changed through the digital media discussion pace. The Rockwells, where we'll be performing April 6th, 7 p.m. show. That is going to be fun. markellis.live or my website, kennapsack.com for ticket information. Little housekeeping there. Dorina, thank you so much for coming in. This won't be the last time. There's a lot of things to talk about with you, and we'll have you back again. Tell them where you want to, where they can find you. Links are down below on the YouTube page, but highlight what you want.
Yeah, I am full on my music journey. So you can go to djbruja.com. Bruja as in witch, Bruja, and you'll find all of the links there. I got a new Patreon. We got a lovely Discord community. It's a little but very nice cult that I've started over there that you can join, and we're doing all kinds of fun music and movie related things. And I got a Mixcloud show every Tuesday right now. Season 1 should be done next month or so, but it's all there, and it's been a lot of fun, and all of the social and Patreon links and YouTube links as well for my YouTube channel are on my website.
Website is
and thanks for
down
having
below.
me, guys. This was fun.
No, always
Yeah,
fun.
thanks for joining us.
Yeah, you've been one of my favorites, but also been, one of my favorite people to be around in terms of watching you change and grow and adapt and learn and always be who you are at the core of it all, though. That's the thing. You've never lost yourself. Alden, thanks again for holding down the fort with Nikki on the Oscars. I only watched the highlights, and I only watched Gosling sing about 20 times, so I wouldn't have been any help to you.
Well, he's singing your anthem because at the end of the day, you are just Ken.
I'm Ken.
It's a huge year for you.
Huge year indeed. All right,
Wonderful,
that is it.
Beautiful, blonde fragility.
Yes.
There you go. All right, everybody. We'll see you next time on Anytime with Ken and Alden. And today, Dorina. Bye-bye, everybody. Goodbye.